Hey everybody, Daniel from Spacedock here, back with another unscripted top 5 list. This time I'm going to be looking at the top 5 stealth ships. The only requirement for this is that it be ships that are designed specifically for the purpose of covert operations and stealth, rather than stealth being an ancillary feature, like in the case of the cloak for the puddle jumper in Stargate. Only ships that are specially designed to be stealth ships. So let's get right into it. First up, in 5th place, I'm getting the obvious one out of the way first, with the bre'l class Klingon bird of prey. Undoubtedly one of the most iconic designs ever produced by the Star Trek property. Definitely the fan favourite Klingon design. This is just a really cool, really classic space frame that's defined some of the coolest scenes in the Star Trek property for decades, and still looks fantastic today. In true Klingon style, this ship represents essentially just a stolen idea from the Romulans that was arguably then done better by the Klingons. It takes advantage of its cloaking device and powerful, very, very focused array of forward weapons to sneak up and bushwhack large ships with heavy disruptor fire and photon torpedoes. The ship is 157.76 meters long, with a dry mass of 236,000 tons, and can be crewed by as few as 12 people when necessary. As well as being the primary attack craft of the Imperial Klingon Defense Force, it also serves as a handy reconnaissance craft and fleet escort for when the Klingons break out the battle cruisers and the attack cruisers. Much like the Federation Miranda class, this ship stays in service for decades upon decades on screen in Star Trek. Unlike the Federation Miranda class, it appears to remain effective for decades upon decades, rather than becoming a handy prefab coffin for 400 Federation officers. Even by the end of the Dominion War, this ship seems to be still going strong, with many refits and updates. The Klingons being a lot more focused on their military than the Federation, you'd imagine they would update their fleet more often, so if they believe that the latest refit incarnation of the bre'l class is still up to snuff, then you can probably believe them, and we can infer that this is a very venerable and well-designed, long-standing warship. I love seeing this ship on screen, especially when it's operating in its cool little formations in Deep Space Nine and some of the larger battles. The whole battle with General Chang's upgraded bre'l class in Star Trek The Undiscovered Country is very cool. I love the effects where it fires when cloaked, and you can see parts of the ship briefly lit up by the light from the torpedoes as it fires. This is just a really well-balanced and striking space frame, and it very much deserves its place as one of the most memorable starships in Star Trek history. Next up, in 4th place, it's a ship that I'm a huge fan of. It's the gorgeous X-70B Phantom prototype from Star Wars The Old Republic. This is essentially what if Aston Martin made spaceships. It's a covert operations ship for Imperial intelligence in the days of the Sith Empire, 3,000 to 4,000 years before the events of the Star Wars movies, and it's designed to serve as a comfortable living space and sophisticated intelligence platform for long-term covert operations. From the exterior, it looks like a slick kind of racing yacht or something with the nice silver and blue tones. The interior is even nicer still, with the wood paneling. The more military aspects on the bridge are really nicely set apart from the more modern and comfortable looking designs in the living quarters and the communications areas, etc. The ship is 80 meters long and 94 meters wide. It's layered with stealth paneling that makes it difficult to detect on sensors, and can also use a full-on visual cloaking device for very short periods in order to escape combat. These were the early days of Stygium crystal cloaking devices, back when Ilum was still being mined for the first time, etc. The ship is armed with heavy laser cannons that are reported to be similar in power to those found on light warships, and it carries a sizable battery of guided missiles in case it gets caught in a dogfight. Of the various player ship designs in the Old Republic, many of which are really, really great, this is certainly my favourite. It looks great from every angle. I love how its command deck is kind of concealed under an overlapping wedge of the hull at the front to protect it from fire from above. The bits of exposed machinery where the shield generators are laid into the dorsal hull are really nice. They remind me of how you might see like an engine beneath a layer of glass on an expensive car or something. There's certainly lots of automotive inspiration in the design of this ship, I expect. This is definitely one of the ships in Star Wars I would most enjoy living aboard, I think, for long-term voyages. The only small problem that is encountered by this is, again, the curse of BioWare. This ship has no toilet. Where's the toilet? They gave us a full deck layout. You can explore this ship in its entirety. It doesn't have a toilet anywhere, even though it's described as being specifically intended for long-term missions for a crew of like 12. It's a fairly common design oversight, but I feel like I should point it out since I already did a whole video on it. But aside from that, install a toilet on this thing and I'd be the first to buy one if they were available for civilian purchase. In third place, a ship that I think is sadly forgotten by a lot of the fan base of its property, the Orion-class Pocket Battlestar from Battlestar Galactica. This is a ship that appeared in the miniseries pilot for Battlestar Galactica Blood and Chrome, which was sadly not picked up into a full show, and it is by far the smallest thing we have ever seen described as a Battlestar. This ship is quite a lot smaller than most standard colonial warships. Even the Valkyrie class is far larger than it, and it's designed to take advantage of Dreadus-absorbing hull plating. The ship is obviously very quick and maneuverable. It has 4 main sublight engines and maneuvering thrusters, carries a crew of 150. In Blood and Chrome, we see it dodging around, weaving through a battle with a Cylon base ship. It seems to have quite a substantial amount of flak, as almost every colonial ship has, as well as 12 ship-to-ship gun batteries, 4 offensive missile tubes, and in an interesting anomaly for Battlestar Galactica, it has 32 interceptor missile launchers, firing missiles intended to destroy other incoming missiles and torpedoes, something that is quite prevalent in real-world naval designs in the modern world, but is strangely uncommon in science fiction, certainly in Battlestar Galactica until this point. The ship carries a small complement of Raptors. I think we can safely assume that it is normally loaded with Mark II Vipers, but in Blood and Chrome we hear that the Battlestar Osiris has just been given a complement of Mark III Vipers, so they may have become the standard after the events of Blood and Chrome. The ship's interior is incredibly cramped and dark and humid and horrible, much like a nuclear submarine or something. The fact that it seems to be very hot inside the ship might be attributed to internal heat sinks in order to maintain stealth, but overall it certainly adds to the correct atmosphere for the miniseries and creates a lot of tension in the sequences where the Osiris appears. This is a really awesome design, and alongside the Valkyrie class, these are the 2 ships that I definitely want to see introduced into Battlestar Galactica Deadlock at some point, or into some sequel or something in the future. They're the 2 canon Battlestars that we've not seen in the game, and they're both really cool, and I can think of a million fantastic game mechanics that you could attribute to a stealth Battlestar like this if you wanted to add it to the game. Really awesome ship, deserves far more appreciation than it gets, but I'm glad we got the awesome sequences that we did get with it in Blood and Chrome. In second place, probably one of the first things that springs to mind for most sci-fi fans when the term stealth ship is brought up, the Normandy-class stealth reconnaissance frigate from Mass Effect. This is a rare example of a stealth ship as a hero ship, and I think it's handled really, really well. This thing's gorgeous. It sets down that really fantastic aerodynamic Systems Alliance space frame style that we see throughout the series. I love the Mantis-like articulating maneuvering thrusters on the fore and aft, and how they all oscillate through different maneuvers to keep the ship stable. The ship is packed with fantastic backstory about being a collaborative Turian human design. The interior layout is really nicely lit and well designed, and the stealth systems themselves are very well explained and laid into the lore in the form of the IES internal emission sink system. Like a lot of sci-fi ships, this vessel hides its thermal signature from other vessels by bottling all of its built-up heat inside heat sinks that are located within the ship's frame, allowing the outside of the ship to almost match the background temperature of space. This can only be maintained for a certain amount of time before you've essentially turned your ship into an incendiary grenade, but just the limited effectiveness of this allows a Normandy-class ship to sneak through an enemy flotilla, to make quick landings and pickups on planets without being detected, and to stay on silent running for maybe 2 to 3 hours before it finally has to radiate its heat in order to keep the crew alive. As a narrative feature, the Normandy's stealth drive comes into play quite a lot and makes for a useful asset for the characters in the story. The same goes for the stealth systems on the SR2 Normandy in the later games. It also fits the overall theme of the Spectre pursuit plot of Mass Effect 1 very well. It gives a logical reason for the story template of you and a small crew going after Saren and staying under the radar rather than the more military response that Shepard might have been used to before being inducted into the Spectres. Despite being designed as a stealth ship, the Normandy class is clearly no slouch in combat. We see it doing some fantastic agile maneuvering in the Battle of the Citadel, and it's also the ship that delivers that final mass accelerator blast through Sovereign's head at the end of the battle. Fantastic moment, and it's really awesome to see how nimble this ship is on screen compared to other Alliance frigates and warships of similar size taking part in the same battle. Really fantastic hero ship and a very well thought out stealth vessel. And in first place, this might be slightly self-indulgent as I was lucky enough to get to name this ship and write some of the backstory for it, but it's the Amun-Ra class stealth frigates from the Expanse. These are the scary covert warships of the Protogen Corporation used to kick off the Eros incident and spark the UN MCR war, and their design completely reflects their purpose and makes for a really striking image on screen. In the books, I believe these are described as looking like sharks in space, which is kind of what's been captured with the design in the show. You can't quite see these things until they give themselves away by a bit of of movement or firing their engines. They're almost invisible against space thanks to their radar reflective angular paneling. And again, like the Normandy class, they use internal heat sinks to bottle all of their thermal emissions so that the ship is indistinguishable from a small asteroid or just background radiation against space. These things are shown to be absolutely lethal in combat. They have rapid reload torpedo launchers, as well as a spinal-mounted light railgun. When it was constructed, it was the smallest ship ever to be equipped with a railgun. And a ship that you can't see that has a railgun is a scary, scary thing. PDC fire and torpedo fire might give you away so that you are revealed the moment you use your weapons, and then there's a bit of a reaction time in which a quick-witted opponent might be able to react and shoot down the incoming torpedoes or get out of the way of the PDC fire. But if you are within 1,000 kilometers of an enemy ship and you fire a railgun, it's hit them before anybody's neurons are fired to think about what's happening. So this is something that is fully capable of just one-shotting battleships 3 times its size if it's put in the right position to do so. The ship is 61.5 meters long and again has the asymmetrical radar reflecting frame. It's also equipped with numerous detachable boarding pods arrayed along the broadsides, which we see used against the Scopuli and the Donager in the series. The ship's PDCs have coolant running through them at all times so that they can be fired and then quickly become undetectable again as the ship repositions. And the frigate even carries a scout shuttle inside of its hull beneath a shielded compartment so that it can be revealed and used for reconnaissance or logistics purposes to load up new torpedoes or transport crew around, etc. And this shuttle is also equipped with the same radar reflective paneling and heatsink technology, so it can't be detected by conventional means either. We of course see the Amun-Ra class in combat a few times in the show, first in battle with the MCRN Donager, where its stealth systems are on best display as it ambushes the ship in a group, and secondly in the Battle of Thoth Station, where we get to see it perform in a straight fight when its position is given away, and it still manages to almost knock out the Corvette class Rocinante with its railgun at one point, and in the end only really loses the battle on account of not having too many PDCs to keep a fight going in close quarters combat once it's been jumped and drawn into close range. Definitely one of the most sophisticated and powerful ships we've seen in the show, and one of the best depictions of the tactical and strategic value of a stealth warship in science fiction, I think. Really awesome design. Thank you for watching Spacedock. If you're interested in supporting the channel, please do check out the links on the screen right now or in the description below for our Patreon and channel membership services. Anything you can pledge goes towards improving our team and our equipment and allowing us to put together bigger and more exciting video projects for you guys on the channel.